I felt comfortable. You guys all get in with Carol for it. But my brother-in-law
Yeah, so people don't trip on it. So it's running the more red eye and it's covered up. Oh, did you really? We gotta get back to see this thing. We promised that we're gonna see him today, and we want to make sure
we don't have our phones on here, obviously.
One more. Oh my God. We're pals. Crazy. That's crazy. You know each other. Oh yeah. Definitely same. You became friends when I sued you. Yeah. Then we became good friends when you did. How you been, man? All right. Really? Yeah. Yeah. Streaming. Yeah. I actually knew his partner that was streaming out there. I hear people talking about it. Marketing guy. Yeah, Joe Clark, he's famous guy.
Okay.
So,
is
we met Soros Labs in summer. And I was that's how we do the deal. It's stupid.
yeah, but I didn't know
And then he got here. Yeah, exactly. So we're living oh my God, working and traveling like crazy. It's great. Performing. Yo, I say you pop up every now and then. You doing volunteer work for the museum or? No. Oh! That's so crazy that this is bizarre. Well, you're one of the only wow, I've never been excluded from the nerd group. Well, you could join. Come to the nerd. Come to the nerd group.
So it's about 5 minutes. We usually start around 5 after.
They don't have any of the planes I work on. They do have planes I work on. So good to see you.
Good to see you. Be here.
That's right. Justice.
It's actually Justiz, and you're going to step all over it if you do that, so just Justiz.
So like I said, I'll come in along with the beds and go see, and I'll call you up.
I gotta tell you, until I saw a picture of us, I was like, and how much time do I have? Oh, maybe. I've got lots of squad. I'm sure we travel a lot. I was shuttle chase private for 2 years. What's the reverse? So that's also a great talk. So, there's stuff you can bring to the
Yeah, I mean, you know, in aerospace.
phone, I can get my stupid computer.
And so
We got it figured out, so it's all good.
excellent job.
Yeah.
Have you read his book? Yeah, I had pushing him to write a CD. It's like a novel. It's like, I mean, literally, it's, you know, not for the procrastination.
What, they want you to write a book?
He wrote a book. Damon writes books. I don't read, and I love his book. I can read. He's an attorney, but he can't read. An attorney that can't read. It's a trick. It's a trick to get through my career without ever actually wanting to. Yeah, I interviewed before that. I was an engineer. That's why I became an engineer.
I see you guys do fun stuff on Facebook.
There's probably a half dozen planes there I worked on. By this? Yep.
104?
Yeah. Not that's the truth.
What did you sharpen?
That's why you have you see there's little red the bumper pads on the sharp
Pocket here, the little stuff. Still in the same house now? Over 20 years. It's got to be.
Okay, when my world's closed, I'm going to
Boy, she'd sell it. And Alan was on his side, I was on my side. Even while we were suing I've become a lot of friends with a lot of them. You recommended my AV receiver, talked about your cars.
So you should get this Sony model.
It's just business. It's just business.
There's two separate things. Oh,
Freeze.
and we hung out in Japan. Fought in Japan. You know what? You decided.
Figure it out.
Let's start the whole long. What you looking for?
Are you drinking my water?
I'm thinking that water.
I'll drink that water.
Don't drink my water.
My life is a Venn diagram. And how long do you guys know each other?
Since they came here. We were Charlie says we were among the first. Since we were wired. Wired it? Sure did. How do you like this food? It's great. No, it sucks.
Oh, I need a really good Italian place for my friend's cooking scene. So I recommended, well, I think they made reservations in before, so. What do you think is better? Johnny Costas?
I don't know if any of those places. I go to the deal.
Real Italian.
Italian food good.
Yeah.
I never forgot. There was one place.
So it's authentic.
Oh, good.
We can sit in this back row, I think.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First things first, can you hear me okay? Is it too loud, maybe? No? Okay, it's good. Okay. Before we get started today, there's a couple groups we want to recognize. I always like to recognize them every Saturday. The first group are the veterans. If you're a veteran, please stand up and let us give you a round of applause for what you did. Thank you very much. Thank you for your service. The second group I'd like to recognize is going to be our museum docents. If you're a museum docent, please stand up and let us thank you. These are the folks that truly make the museum special. All right, and without further ado, to introduce our speaker today, I am proud, and I hope you guys will all give a warm welcome to Mrs. Justiz.
So I was going to tell you a quick story. I was a rock and roll DJ in Houston. I used to be cool. I could stay out past 8:30 at night back then. And David Crosby called me and said, there's a bunch of people, there's a bunch of astronauts who want to come to the show. I don't have time to deal with this. Now this is May of 1990. There's no cell phones. He's like, can you handle this? I'm like, yeah, that would be so fun. Of course, it's like herding cats. You know, they're all engineers. But I had a blind date with an astronaut. We all go to the show. I scared the astronaut to death, but this really cute NASA pilot was a part of the group. And that was June 3rd, 1990, and we have been together ever since. Please welcome Wonder Husband, as I call him, otherwise known as NASA's Dr. Charles Justiz.
Thank you, my love. Also, thank you to all the veterans, fellow veterans out there, and all the volunteers of the museum. We couldn't have this kind of a get-together without them. So thank you very much. I am Dr. Charlie Justiz. Here I am, very relaxed in front of my office in El Paso. And the reason I'm relaxed is we landed and the weather was too hot, and we'll talk about that in a bit. How many pilots do we have? Quite a few. Airline pilots, former? None. Good. The lies come. Yeah, an airline pilot couldn't do this. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate, graduated in a while ago. I am a NASA doctoral fellow. 30 years of flying as a research pilot at NASA, and I have over 22,000 flight hours. And almost all of that is hand flying because none of our autopilots ever worked on the research aircraft. So one of the things we have to ask first is, why do we need a shuttle carrier aircraft? So the problem begins here, where the little dot on the far left is where we made the stupid thing. The little dot on the far right is where we launched the stupid thing. That's 2 miles apart. Great idea. Smart move, guys. Okay, it gets better. Trust me. This is an orbiter. The problem with an orbiter is it is not an airplane. Orbiters have to be in space, and it's a completely different environment than just flying around. Airplanes are tough enough to design. On orbit, you've got the sun in a vacuum baking one side of your spaceship. The other side is absolutely stone cold. Now, what does that do to anything is it bends it a lot. So we have a lot of problems with thermal stresses. So the way they fix that, that's one piece. Everything inside is completely carried through. You cannot cut it apart. You cannot take the wings off because they're part of the spacecraft. You can't take the rudder off, the big vertical thing on the back. It's part of the spacecraft. So we only have this thing that's, oh, what it is, 78 feet across, wingtip to wingtip, about 57 feet tall from the ground up. How many tunnels do you know that are that big in the United States of America? And that's what we said, 0. And not only could we not take it by train, on the roads, we couldn't take it by boat. We even tried that. We went on a little excursion just to go from Palmdale, up there by Edwards, down to the Port of Los Angeles. There were 27 places we couldn't cross with an orbiter. We said, well, you know, that takes care of that. And then it got even better. We said, well, even if we could, look, you've got the blue dot on the left, the little circle down there is called the Panama Canal, and then you've got to come up to Florida. That's about 4,500 miles. Okay, so you're going to spend about, all told, from when it lands to when you get to actually touch it again in the orbiter processing facility, all the way over in Florida, 45 days before you can get there. And it's been beat up on a boat. It's been saltwater infused. You know, it's going to be worthless. You're going to have to work on that thing for months before you get it back in space. So we said, okay, that's also a bad idea. But how did we come up? Oh, and one of my favorite ideas, the Russians did this because they're crazier than we are, which is hard to believe sometimes. They had a problem with security. They were worried that this is the Buran, or the Russian shuttle, or what we call the shuttle ski. And it flew once, and they looked at it and said, that is the scariest thing we've ever done. We're not putting people in it. So it flew unmanned, or uncrewed, as we say now. But the bottom line was, they said, if I deorbit, and I'm not too accurate, because their stuff is not as accurate as our stuff. This is pre-GPS. So it was possible they were going to come in a place that people didn't like them. So they had the jets that they take into orbit, and they would fly to Soviet airspace. And I go, oh yeah, I want to see this. They flew the airplane once, or the Buran once, under power, and they said, we're not going to do that again either. So a question is, how do you get a concept like the shuttle carrier aircraft with all of these negative things? I've got to move this stupid thing from the left side to the right side. How do you do it? And this guy is the guy that finally came up. Now, I met this guy. He's John W. Kiker. He was the head of the mechanical division at the Johnson Space Center. And he was, you know, he had a bachelor's degree, but this guy was passionate. And I was there as a young guy in 1980, and I needed to do some computer runs. You can ask Ellen Kramer. He's my other fellow geek. That's what we do. So I was trying to get my master's degree at the time. And he goes, yeah, let me help you. And here's this guy, and he says, and I was, of course, in my blue flight suit because I'd just come from work, and it's after hours, and I was the only guy in the halls. And he says, I'll help you make the run. And he says, you know what the shuttle carrier is? I go, of course I know what it is. That's a great thing. He goes, I did that. I go, what do you mean you did that? He goes, I did that because nobody wanted to do it. They said it was too risky. And I said, well, now, that's a story I've got to hear. So, bottom line, this is the only sign he had in his office. I do not have to say anything else to describe this guy. That's him, completely. He also had these pictures, okay? I didn't even know some of the, you know, that one on the left, I had no clue that existed until I met this guy. So bottom line is, he was that kind of strange, eclectic, wonderfully passionate person. So he came up with an idea that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get the NASA bureaucracy to buy off on it. But he was a modeler. And he built a scale model of a shell carrier aircraft. And it was awful. He hated the way it flew and the way it was. And he had the motors jacked up. Now watch this takeoff. My shuttle carrier never flew like this. It almost goes vertical because the grass was in the way. And what I really love is that's Chris Kraft flying. It goes upside down. The orbiter goes upside down, but he still gets it to land. And the beautiful thing was, it didn't matter. Also, you notice he was in a blue flight suit? Back then, a blue flight suit was, you're a god. No kidding, because you are one of the, either the research pilots or the astronauts, but you do stupid stuff. So, you know, we like you, we'll buy you a beer, but we just don't want you to, date our daughter, kind of thing. So he ended up with this thing, and the motors, of course, he's a modeler for many years. He looked at the motors, he goes, I need more power, because, engineers, you always need more power. So he got this guy to jack those up, and he wasn't sure, when he's got this whole raft of managers going to watch this, he didn't know if the motors were going to blow up. So he goes, I don't care, let's go. And that was the first takeoff they did. So that was a wonderful thing. But because of him, the managers could now visualize it. It's very visual. Yeah, of course it's a model, it's gonna be goofy, but we can do this. And because of that, they all said unanimously, that's the way to go. And that was the end of that. It was done. We had a 747 bought within 1 year. They did some tests on it, and it was modified within the next year. It was like boom, boom, it was done. So, for a second, and I mean for a nanosecond, the C-5 Galaxy, does anybody know what a C-5 looks like? Yeah, it's a big monster airplane. So, why didn't they do that? The bottom line was, you can look on the left-hand side on the bottom of the picture, it's got a T-tail. A T-tail is like, if you see the Learjet, the brown and white jet behind us, that's a T-tail, it's a high tail. Now, we're about to do, the very first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do the approach and landing test, which means we're gonna drop a shuttle off the top of the airplane. It goes up. Well, as it goes up, the engines don't exist because it's a glider. The 747 has got engines, and they're going to be pulled all the way back, but they're still giving you a forward thrust, so they were worried that the orbiter would come back and hit the tail. Well, if it hits the tail on the 747, it's a vertical tail, and it's okay, because you still have the horizontal part. It's not going to be pretty, but you'll be able to get it on the ground. There's a T-tail also. The C-5, excuse me, that thing you will not survive. You've lost both vehicles if that happens. So they said, that's bad. So, the whole, NASA's always very good at, the good, bad, that was bad. So we're not gonna do that. So the C-5 left, and we ended up with these two guys. We ended up with two, and the reason we have two is because one was always broken. So if you wanna move an airplane, you say, I've gotta move it today, it can't be broken. So what we did is we finally said, look, love that sound. What you have to do is one of the airplanes always was in extended maintenance. For about 2 years, you go into and you do a lot of maintenance on the airplane. It comes out of maintenance, the other one goes into maintenance, and it's constantly a cycle. So one is always up and flying, guaranteed. The other one is always guaranteed not. But that way we always have it guaranteed, I don't care where it goes, we can go grab it with this thing and go pick it up and bring it back to where it needs to be. So we had two of them. NASA 905, which is the close one to us, was the first one. That was in 1976, is when we started the modification on it. And it did about 70 of the 87 ferry missions of the operational phase. It did 46 of the 54 post-mission ferries. And the one in the back over there, we got in November of 90, and it flew 386 flights in the rest of the ferry missions. So both of them flew a whole ton and did great work for us. So the question we have to ask is, what had to be changed in the 747? And interestingly, there it is. We flew with only 2 pilots and 2 engineers. That was it. 4 people in the airplane that carried 600. The reason for that was risk. We thought there's a really good chance this isn't going to work out right, and this way we only expose 4 people. It was as simple as that. The other thing, if you look at it, the orbiter, which is the thing that sits on top, the motors are in the back of the orbiter. So almost all of the weight on the orbiter is in the back, which is behind the wing of the 747. Huge shift in the center of gravity. We can't fly like that. We put the aerodynamic center of the orbiter in the middle because we needed that to help lift. When you're in cruise, the orbiter carries its own weight. I'll say that again. When you're in cruise at 250 knots, which is as fast as we're allowed to go, that is carrying its own weight. It is not doing a darn thing about the drag that it's creating. It's creating plenty of that, but it lifts itself, that's kind of nice. So we had to put the aerodynamic center in the middle to let it do its job. But that meant the center of gravity was way back. So we had a couple of heavy planes that always flew in the front. It was 700 pounds each, monsters. But we covered them in blue, because that's pretty. I'll show you. And then we had 7,000 pounds of pea gravel. And you go, like Home Depot? Yes, like Home Depot, in bags. in big steel cases in the front, in the forward cargo compartment. And that was part of the walk around, is I would open the door and say, yes, there's pea gravel, and close the door. Because I needed 7,000 pounds plus the 1,400 pounds in the front of the airplane to balance the motors that are on the back of the shuttle. And if it's not there, it will not fly. So that is some of the more interesting things. Of course, we upgraded the engines. We cheated. We put big monster engines on there because somebody gave them to us, honestly. They gave us much more margin for takeoff. We had the struts that support the orbiter that everybody sees. And then, of course, we had to put the tail cone on the orbiter. The tail cone is only put up for flights on the shuttle carrying aircraft. Everything inside from what you call door one, which is the first door forward, where the blue stripe is, back is gone. All insulation, all seats, all the plastic stuff that you get in so you can put your bags in, gone. I needed every pound of weight off of there that I could so that I could carry the orbiter. Otherwise, I could not have carried it. And then, of course, you've got the two vertical fins on the back. So if you look at the cockpit, if you had an airline pilot that flew the 747, goes, oh yeah, I recognize this, not much different. And you know, this is what we call a rope starter versus the older models have all this magic, you know, GPS and pictures and moving map displays. Oh no, we don't have any of that. We have old stuff, and we have to do math in public to make sure we're in, you know, the United States still and stuff like that. It was terrible, and even worse, this sideways thing. That's where the flight engineer took care of all the systems on the airplane. All of it, none of it was computers. It was all us. This is the weights in the front. And on the left-hand side, you can see how they covered it. See how pretty the blue is. And see on the right, it's metal. It's a big old blivet. And I took this picture right before one of my flights. And you can see that they're there. It's both on both sides. That is what was necessary, or we could not fly. It would not balance. Here's the coming back. That's the end of the habitable area. The blue carpet, and you can see the spiral staircase. We always thought that was very cool. I used to love going up the spiral staircase. It had a you know, big sense of class. I had class as I was going up that thing. Of course, then you get up there and you go, oh, what am I doing? Then you've got the two doors over there, and if you look at it, there's lying down a little closer to us is this blue thing. That was an acoustic cushion that had both acoustic and thermal properties. It was almost 3/4 of an inch thick. It took 5 guys to put it up. It was massive. So when you put it up there, it's still a carpet kind of thing. It's flexible, but you could not pick it up off the ground with one hand. It was impossible. Got a picture here with it. You can see this spiral staircase. This is door one. Just as you step on, you can see the carpet over there. Without that, we would freeze. That's the only thing that kept it possible to stay up in the cockpit while we're flying. Behind that, you can see the last 2/3. This is what it looked like. Everything's gone. I mean, the rugs are gone. Why? I need every pound off of there. Now, there's the white stanchions in the back that you can see. That's interesting. The engineers at Boeing said, you know, if you're carrying an orbiter and somebody stands back there, it'll set up a harmonic and the tail can fall off. And I said, my hand is up. I have a question. And I said, what do you mean fall off? He goes, yeah. And so I said, show me. He shows me. I go, oh my God, you're right. That is true. So the way we, you know, you've got this problem with weight, so how did we handle it? We put a rope across here. But it was yellow, so it's okay. And to be fair, there's only 4 of us when we're flying with the orbiter, and you know, the tail fell off, and there's 3 of us in the cockpit. We know who to blame before we hit the ground. And it got so bad that one of the guys said, put a spider back there And he goes, why is that? To scare people back to the other side of the road. Oh, okay. Now the orbiter was carried, you could not carry it with the standard 747 structure because all it is a big empty cylinder. So what we did is we modified it, and you've got these things. So you see the stanchions on the outside are actually connected to this on the inside, and that supports it. It takes all of the weight down to the wheels and the wing so that they can take the load. And so you can see the yellow, that's what it's connected to. Now, we had huge limitations, of course, with this airplane. And you can see a standard 747 could go, put on 710,000 pounds. By the way, does anybody, these are just numbers. How heavy is a 737 out here when it's fully loaded? Anybody? How many? Fully loaded. 130 is empty, 180-ish is the big ones like 800, 900s. So 180. The orbiter is almost 40,000 pounds heavier than that. Come on. I'm carrying a 737 and his brother every time I fly. So, but we limited it to 660,000. The maximum zero fuel weight. The crosswind, we have this big orbiter on the top, so we said, now 15 knots, that's it, forget it. And then the big thing that killed us was the speeds came down. We can no longer go at 0.89 Mach like the the 747 can. We're stuck at 0.6, so 250. We're burning twice as much fuel, going half as fast. And it's like, yay. We were on a mission. So what missions do we have? We didn't just have the carriers, we had other weird stuff. For example, of course, already spoken of the approach and landing tests. In 1977, we did 8 captive flights with this to convince us that we weren't going to really kill ourselves by doing this. Then we did the 5 free flights to try to kill ourselves. And the very last one was with the tail cone off. And the thing we're worried about there is hitting the vertical tail on the 747, which it didn't. So we were still able to use the airplane, which was nice. We also went to the Paris Air Show with it in '83. We'd already flown the shuttle, space shuttle, in 1981, but we needed to go ahead and kind of say, hey, you guys want to do this thing called International Space Station, so why don't you come on and join us? Look, we've got this shiny toy. And that's exactly what we were doing. We did a little PMR run and it worked. We got everybody on board. This was at Dulles, and it just so happened we had the Concorde behind it, so I do that for anybody that really is a Concorde fan. That is just a great shot. We carried weird stuff on the back of it because people paid us to do it, but we didn't do it a whole lot. And finally, really what we did is we carried orbiters. So, what was it like to carry an orbiter on the back? First of all, let me tell you, the unmodified 747-100 is a joy to fly. It is so sweet. The controls are harmony. Oddly enough, you bring the power up on this big monstrosity on the runway, and it kind of scoots. And it's like, I like this. As we say, pilots, daddy like. So there's that. The controls, landings. I have had about half of my landings in a straight 747. When you touch down, you'll see that you've got these articulating gear on those big monster things. And when the gear detilt, they say, oh, you're on the ground, and I'm not going to let you fly again. And it pops up spoilers that kills all the lift on your wing. That thing actually slaps a bar back in the cockpit that scares you to death. I mean, it whacks back, and it's like, oh, but yeah, I'm on the ground, and I didn't know it. It's like, I like this a lot. So I'm telling you, the 747, straight 747, was a joy. A malfunction in a 747, I don't care. You've lost a hydraulic pump, who cares? I've got 3 more. I lost an electrical circuit. Oh, poor you. You've got 8 more. Come on, let's get over it. And there's nothing, I've lost components on the 747 It's like I never lost any function. The gear always came down, the flaps always worked, the flight controls always worked. Don't care. Air conditioner always worked. I love that. So we called it the old man's airplane on purpose. It took care of you. So the only time we got to do a carry was when we couldn't land at KSC in Florida. We would pray for rain every freaking landing because we like flying. So there you are. We did have one blue dot that's in the middle of the country-ish there towards the left is White Sands Missile Range. We did land there on STS-3 one time, and we got to fly out of there as well. So overall, except for the 5 free flights that we had at Edwards Air Force Base with the approach and landing test, we've landed the 54 times in California, and White Sands once, 78 times in KSC, so we missed 78 times. I'm sorry, that would have been nice. So let's assume we landed at Edwards. This is a nice little shot of Edwards from the space, and that's what it looks like. And we are all the way to the north, about under the word at. That is where the former Dryden Research Center, Armstrong Research Center now, is up there also with this thing that I should show you, because it tells you how do you get an orbiter on the back of the 747. And it's this way. You've got these 2 vertical erector sets on either side with arms sticking out, and then you have arms sticking out from that, and it comes down with a bar. It grabs the orbiter, lifts it up 10 feet off the ground. You close the doors and everything on the orbiter. You lift it up higher, and then you put it down on the 747, what they call a soft dock. Say, is everything fit? Yes, okay. Then they do a hard dock, and within 1 minute, they just kind of let the weight off, and a whole 747 just goes, ugh. You can hear it do that too. Ugh. So it's quite a move. And then after that, they just push it back, and it is ready for the flight crews. It takes from landing, however, to get to this point, almost a week. So we've already lost a week. And they go, well, what are they doing? Are they taking stuff off? Very little. They hardly take anything off. What they do is that you can see the windows are covered up so that you don't damage them. Those things are hard to replace, so we don't want them damaged. They go, well, don't they get damaged on launch with all that junk? Yes, but I don't want to damage them. Let somebody else do it, then we can blame them. Not on my watch. So there are 4 things that I can't forget while I'm flying with an orbiter. The first one, daytime flights only. Daytime. Why? Number 2, no flight in visible moisture. What's visible moisture?
Rain.
A cloud. Why can't NASA say that? Because we're NASA. It has to be bigger lines, bigger, numbers, and bigger words. It's just, that's the way we are. So, visible moisture, cloud. So, I can't see a cloud if it's dark. Why couldn't they say that? Of course they don't. The third thing is the no flight less than 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, for Europeans here, like minus 10-ish centigrade. The reason for that is we have hypergolics that stay in the vehicle. What's a hypergolic? If you throw 2 things together and they explode, then they're hypergolic. And engineers in the space program said, this is a good idea to have on a spacecraft. And actually it is a good idea because what they do is they squirt them into a cone, and the little flashes you see to maneuver when you're in space, that's how you do it, hypergolics. But you can't empty them because you need to have the lines pressurized. Bottom line, no flight less than 15 F because it'll freeze and crack those lines which you cannot get to. Now remember, this is a spacecraft. You look at all of these airplanes, and I can show you inspection ports everywhere on them. Inspection ports. You want to inspect? You're going to crawl inside the vehicle, and you're going to, go, yeah, that looks good. pull my feet, get me out. That's exactly the way they inspect these things. It's very tight. So bottom line is you don't want to crack anything. And of course, the last thing is APSIA, pounds per square inch absolute. I cannot fly at less than 8 psi. I have to translate that into an altitude when I know the temperature. Why is that? This is ridiculous. If some air gets trapped in one of the compartments, it's going to maybe crack something. And I go, wait a minute, this is a spacecraft. Doesn't it fly at no PSI at all? It's in space, yes. Yeah, but, it was one of those things. We always argue about that, but we said, okay, you don't want us to do it? We're test pilots, we're not gonna do it. You're done. So here's a dirty little secret. Okay, we're doing all of this, but there's some magic that I have to tell you about. All big airliners have something called a max landing weight. A max landing weight is exactly what it sounds like. I cannot land the airplane if the weight of the airplane is heavier than that number. Well now, if you look at a straight 747, it's at 720,000 pounds. Well, I can't land. If I fill it up with gas and I'm at 720,000 pounds, I have to wait till 560,000 pounds before I can land. Well, now, if I'm going to, from New York to Tokyo, I'm fine. I'll land when I get there. It'll be fine. I'll have all the gas burned off. If I have a problem on takeoff, I have pumps on board that can get rid of 5,000 pounds a minute. Do the math. How long will it take me to get rid of 160,000 pounds divided by 5? It takes a couple hours. That's okay. For us, it would be 20 minutes usually before we could land. And so this would happen to me, and the guys would say, well, all right, where are you going to dump fuel if you lose a motor with the orbiter on board? And you're taking off from Edwards Air Force Base. I go, I'm looking at all the lake beds and stuff, and I go, I'm going to be dumping fuel on the lake bed as I'm landing. I am not going to fly around dumping fuel, waiting for me to get back down. I'm going to land, and you get to inspect an airplane. Lucky you, because I ain't going to keep an orbiter flying on 3 motors. Because if I lose the next motor, now I become a hero. I don't want to be a hero. I just want to be anonymous in the background. Thank you. But here's the problem with this. You have to land with a certain amount of gas. We call it minimum fuel. The minimum fuel, let's say, is 20,000 pounds of gas. These are big numbers. This airplane burns 40,000 pounds an hour. It burns a gallon of fuel every airplane length. A gallon, a gallon, a gallon, a gallon, a gallon, a gallon. Are you kidding me? This thing is burning like crazy. So I have a problem here. If I have a heavy orbiter, which this is the heaviest one I carry, 221,000 pounds, 1 1/4 737s, from the time between the first moment I could legally land, because, the max landing weight, I have to burn down to that, and the last moment I'm legally allowed to fly is 3 minutes. Isn't that fun? Did I ever have a problem? No, because we had this guy with us. We didn't fly like airlines. We flew very controlled. And we went to military bases, mainly so we could control when we landed. I have missed my landing time on that airplane. 17 seconds was the biggest miss I made. We had 4 people with calculators and handheld GPSs. I mean, we were playing the game, and we hit that every single time. So we had the Pathfinder aircraft. You've got this orbiter on the top. A shuttle tile is kind of like if you take those little foamy floaty toys that you have, or like a cooler that you can crumble in your hand. That's about the consistency of a shuttle tile. Okay, now it's cool because what you can do is you can take a blowtorch, and I actually did this. I thought it was stupid, but I did it anyway because I was young. And you hit it with that blowtorch, and it's glowing. It is glowing. I mean, it almost hurts your eyes to look straight at it. You turn it off, lay the blowtorch down, still glowing, and you pick it up. And if you don't think so, go online, go to YouTube. They got pictures of this. We used to do it all the time for demonstration purposes. It's still glowing, and you can tell it's hot. You know, you want to grab it by the edges, but the edges have already cooled off. I mean, it was just shedding heat like crazy. It's like, that is amazing stuff. But it was like a sugar cube. You could crush it in your hand. Not while it's hot. Don't do that. But these guys wanted to make sure that we did not fly through clouds, because those tiles would disintegrate. And so we had two of them. We had one was we had the DC-9 and the KC-135 on the left. And they were both zero-G aircraft. And they would go 100 miles in front of me when I was in the shuttle carrier. And we'd have communication, and they always just steered us and said, no, you know, I'm going over Alexandria, it's wet over here, go about 20 miles left. Okay, and that's what you do. It was that simple, and it worked perfectly for us. Now, you go, oh, these are airliners, this is very cool. That's how cool it was, as in not. You know, we packed 40 people in there. These guys are mechanics. That's a spare tire for the 747, and it's a whole stack. It's got the brakes, and the tire's already inflated, and it stinks. It's awful. But, you know, you got to get the job done. So that's the Pathfinder. But how did this all work? Well, it's real simple. At 2 o'clock in the morning, we start a weather brief. That's our 2 o'clock in the morning weather brief. You can see I'm up there towards the top. The guys to my right are the crew of the Pathfinder. There's another pilot to my left that was flying the 747 with me, and that's it. We also have the guys that were going to be our engineers doing their stuff. At 2 o'clock, we're doing, you know, you start off with, what are the available bases? We have about 20 airfields that we can hit. Now you're saying, well, you're going to do just one? No, we're going to try to do 3 hops in one day, because we got to move this thing. And usually because of the weather, we want to get ahead of the weather as much as we can, because if that weather hits, we're going to be stuck for weeks, and we have to get this thing delivered so they can get it ready for the next mission. So we would brief, and we'd worry, you know, can you guys take us? You know, do you have enough gas? Do you have personnel to put gas on there? Do you have enough rooms in case we get stuck there for 120 people, which was the entourage. You know, the biggest entourage we ever traveled with was actually 2 airplanes. One was a Pathfinder, and you just get cowbells out and you herd everybody in the right direction. But you show up and you don't have 120 rooms, that could be a problem. You show up, they don't have enough gas, that could be a problem. So we get all that worked out. You can see there's military people in that meeting. They are doing the phone calls at that moment. They go, hey, you know, Barksdale, can you guys handle the shuttle carrier? Yes, they've already trained. We've told them ahead of time this could be possible. They've trained their people. Everything is taken care of on their end, and they're ready. You just have to make the last step and say, can you take us today? All right. So pre-flight starts in the dark, 4 o'clock in the morning. Get the airplane ready. So we do that. The doors are down in this particular case because it is hot. This is the desert, Edwards Air Force Base, and it was, at sunrise, it was 115 degrees, I think. So, you know, it's a desert just like we are here. So we were able to finally get off the ground. They go, and I go 15 minutes later. And this is a great shot. Now's a good time to discuss how it was to fly the shuttle carrier with an orbiter on the back. As I mentioned before, the straight 747 is a joy to fly. Love, love, love it. Now this takeoff, for example, and I believe this is me taking off, you can't push the power up very quickly. You've got an orbiter up above you. If you do that, you pop a wheelie. 660,000 pound wheelie, that's on national television. No, Bad idea. You push the power up very slowly. The ground roll is almost twice as much as it would be on an airliner using the same power settings we're using. An airliner will do something called balancing the field. They'll pull the power back to save the motors some. We never did that because we needed all the power we had, and we pushed it up. So the problem also is we would take off 40 knots faster than a normal airliner because it's going to lift its weight, but only at cruise speed. So we've got to get enough speed for it to lift some of its weight. Hey, help a little bit, have a little something, something. Every time, the first time I raised the landing gear, and every time after that, it stinks. It smells like burning rubber. And the first time that happened, of course, the engineers didn't tell me. They're like, I'm like, not funny, and it does it every time because you're taking the tires right to the limit that they're capable of. The vertical center of gravity, by the way, up there, if you take the airplane past about 20 degrees, there's a big thing up there. It wants to keep going. That's bad. For all the non-pilots, that's bad. Okay, not good. So you don't tend to bank it up a whole lot. And if you do, you've got to be ready for it. And at cruise speed, of course, it did lift its own weight, 40,000 pounds an hour. We were happy when we got down to 40,000 pounds per hour. So, it sounds like, we've got all this gas, 120,000 pounds. Well, I have to land with a certain amount. That means I've got 2.5 hours of flying. I cannot fly as fast as an airliner. I can only go about 265 miles an hour. That's it. So how far can I go? About that far on the map. That's it. So the other part that I really love is right about now you're getting up to speed. It would shake. That thing was shaking like crazy. All the turbulence is coming off and hitting the vertical tails back there. So the yoke, that's the thing you hold on to, would shake about plus minus 2 inches, just not that fast, the whole time. I go, well, that's disconcerting. Nobody told me about that either. And when you're on autopilot in cruise, what really fascinated me is, you're paying attention to everything. You're a little hypersensitive, obviously. The airplane would very slowly scooch over and stop at about a 2-degree bank. And you could feel, and the reason for that is the tail, the vertical tail, is blanked by the orbiter. And there's a thing on the tail, the very back, the rudder, that does something called yaw damping. Now, yaw is turning like this. If you have a swept-wing aircraft, you're susceptible to yaw. It will yaw, all day long. So you put a yaw damper in there, it can read what's going on, it's got gyros, and it says, oh, we'll fix that for you. And they work great. Unless you're blanking it with an orbiter, in which case it doesn't. So you would go, and all of a sudden, you're like, hey, we're banked at 2 degrees. And I can feel the rudder is just getting a little bit of sensibility. And I go to the other side. And you can feel like you would do that all the way across the country. It's doing that. And it's like, oh God, for God's sake, stop it. But 2 degrees. For miles. So that was what it was like. It was fun and games, let me tell you. So then we land. We've landed. What do? Well, you've already briefed what you're going to do. You look for differences. The first thing I do is you usually get somebody and you go, you're the PR guy. There's always going to be somebody that wants to talk to you from some newspaper, radio station, TV station. Doesn't matter. And when I was a captain, I said, no, we are going to support all of those because that's what pays our bills, is the American public. And so you're going to give them, time. And we will take off when you're finished. Don't worry, we need you. So, but you're going to talk to them. And so this was me in the upper left-hand corner. It was my turn in the barrel. Yeah, I took my own turn also. We've landed at this place. We've got the security people out because we're worried about that. We've got the firefighters. We've got everything going on. And, the engineers are back in there. Yes, we've got the fuel load. Yes, we know we've got the correct flight plan loaded into the archaic computers. Everybody ready to go? Yes. An hour and 30 minutes later, we're taking off again. And we did it again and again. So 3 times in a day, if you got the weather, which was about 50% of the time. So they've retired. Shuttle carriers are no more, which is sad. But, you know, good things happen. First of all, I told you that we don't get to fly unless they land in the wrong place. Well, this is, unfortunately, Atlantis. It landed in the Cape. So they just towed it over to the visitor center. I go, that's cheating. You know, put it on the back of this thing. Let me fly it around some. But no, they wouldn't let me do that. So that's okay. But what we did was, we grabbed the Enterprise, or excuse me, the Discovery that had just landed at KSC. And it turned out the Udvar-Hazy in DC had the Enterprise, which was the one that we dropped off the airplane that didn't fly in space. And you go, well, we're the Udvar-Hazy. We're the National Air and Space Museum. We should have a flown shuttle. You can have this trashy little Enterprise thing. And New York says, are you going to throw that away? You know, we'll take it. And we said, well, and we'll move it. And that's exactly what happened, is we picked up the Discovery. We took it from KSC to Dulles Airport. Now, we did not have teammate devices and no MDDs there, so they had these big monster cranes, about 6 of them at each one of these places, grabbing orbiters and pulling them off the back of 747s and putting it back on again. So we're kind of all looking like this. You know, I don't want to see this. And we took, and we grabbed the Enterprise, and we took it, as you can imagine, to Intrepid, where it sits now. And it actually has, that was when it just arrived. They have a nice enclosure. If you get a chance in New York City to go take a look at it, I strongly recommend it. It's a great display. Also, the one at KSC is great. They've got the payload bay doors open, which are really, really spectacular. You can put a Greyhound bus in the payload bay of the orbiter and have room left over. When I say room, lots of room. So Enterprise is in Intrepid. We've got NASA 905, and I did this because that's what you can do with an airplane. You can take the wings off, you can take the tail off. And guess what? It's a mess. So we did that. We had it at Ellington. We moved it, I think it was 6 miles, whatever it is, to Space Center Houston, and closed down traffic. Everybody was, you know, giving us good old Texas curses. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, go home. But we ended up with this particular thing. It's NASA 905, so it's the actual 905 that did all the approach and landing tests. And this is Independence Plaza, presented by Boeing. So you know they did a good job. And it carries, you know, 905 carried the space shuttle 223 times, it's got 11,000 hours, it's amazing. The cool thing about this is Boeing is the one who supervised. They had to cut the gear off because 2 of the gear are on the wing. So they had to cut those off, and they had to put everything back together. Well, guess what? They say this is flight certifiable. If you can put motors on the thing, you can fly it today. I go, no, you can fly it. I'll take the second one. Finally, this is, I threw this in because you guys need to see this. I don't know how good it's going to come out, but this was the taking Endeavour to the California Science Museum. We took off out of Edwards Air Force Base, and the first thing we did is we went up to San Francisco, because it's right on the way to Los Angeles. And then we did a whole bunch of flybys of it. It's some of the prettiest give back that I think we've done with that vehicle. It is just, you know, wonderful to see. The weather was perfect. The response, every time I would land at a base with the shuttle on board, it looked like this. You do a flyby of the Griffith Observatory, and it's packed. Every place you go, it's packed. And it's just, you know, just a beautiful statement of the American spirit. Hollywood. It's kind of hard to see the Griffith Observatory there, but there, the people there were just up on the railings, just pushed up against it. Those airplanes next to the shuttle carrier, by the way, are F-18s from the Dryden, or excuse me, the Armstrong Research Facility at Edwards Air Force Base. And the reason they're doing it and we're not doing it is because they have more gas and they have radar, air-to-air radar, so they can see if there's any traffic. So it was a safety thing. And here's, we were completely legal at LAX doing a high-speed pass with 2 F-18s and an orbiter in formation. That's my story. And they continue doing this, and bottom line is we finally land successfully, which is always a good thing. One of the cool things about this is watching the landing, you can actually see when it comes up the landing gear, you've got 2 of them tilted really far up, and you can see this, the guy that actually made this landing, Jeff Boltrey, was the chief pilot for the shuttle carrier, slowly derotates those gear, and I go, that's control. Usually I was just happy to keep the airplane under me during one of my landings with that thing on it. It was a handful. Yeah. How many people have gone to the California Science Museum to see the display? It's beautiful. They really did a great job with it. By the way, that's the end of my presentation, but I'm going to keep watching. So if you guys have any questions.
If you've got a question, raise your hand, I'll bring you the microphone. I'm coming right behind you.
That's not 20 degrees of bank. I can have a talk with Jeff. Stop that.
So I'm not a pilot, but what altitudes would you usually fly at, and how would that change during the course of a trip?
The altitude, good question. The altitude we would fly is dependent on 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Now you lose 3.5 degrees per 1,000 feet that you go up, or 2 degrees centigrade. It's called the adiabatic collapse rate. Bottom line, 15,000 feet. Airliners go at 37, 39. Now, what's even worse is they're going at a higher Mach number than we are. So the Mach number is, I'm not bunching the molecules up too fast. Great. Well, the molecules are further apart, so they're going faster than we are. They're almost going double our speed over the ground. So 15,000, here's the landing. Look at that on the far side. Show off. I hate people like that. Brilliant job. Now, that little, you can't stop the guys from doing it. Everybody does it automatically. I don't know why. The question was, has anybody ever used a parachute? Only people that fly with me. No, that's not true. No, we did not. They had parachutes on. They did not have ejection seats. What they did is they designed a tunnel that you would have to get out of your seat while the airplane is flailing and falling out of space, walk back calmly about this far, wait for it, still walking, still walking. Right here, open casually a round tube and step in and fall. The chances of that working, they decided, were somewhere between 0 and none. So they said, you know, I can save about 1,000 pounds if I get rid of that thing. And then said, well, good, because we just did, Boeing says, we just did a study, and the chances were about 90% you're getting sucked into a motor when you do that. And I go, okay, thank you for telling us that after we were going to do this. That's excellent. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, please. The main carrier is circular frame that goes into the fuselage. That doesn't touch down on the 747 spars, does it? Those hard points.
The hard point is they've got a carry-through structure, so you've got these big monster pieces that we had to add that go on top of the, let me see, well, by the way, this really is on the shuttle carrier. We are required to have that because it's in, somebody put that in the blueprints. They have to paint that on, and their note has to be in red. They failed one of the paint jobs because note was in blue. Okay.
So, two other questions. I understand why you have the vertical fins on the tail to give a little more yaw stability with that extra shuttle forward of the center of gravity. Did you have to build on a bigger horizontal stabilizer to take the extra drag that was situated above the center of the
Now,
747?
it's a good question. What happens is the vertical fin that's in the middle is blank. We just assume it's useless. So we take the surface area of that, we divide it by 2, we say, well, I can do that math. And I'll put that much area on the horizontal. And you're done. So even if it's completely blank, it still has the same, what they call directional stability, as you would have if the other one was there. Now, the good news is when that thing's off, oh my God, are you stable? I mean, it's like, come on, move. You know, it really is like a rock up there.
But what about the pitch stability?
It's still the same. It's still rock solid.
Thank you.
We've got one over here. They flagged me down. So.
How did they get the shuttle on the Intrepid in New York City?
Cranes. See, at that point, I didn't care. You know, but I had, you know, I was watching on TV with a Scotch. You know, it's like, this will be fun. And they were brilliant. I mean, they grabbed, one crane grabbed the back, another crane grabbed the front on both sides. They had little adapters that they built. And they just kind of lifted the thing up and walked it over here and set it down right where it was, which is way back there. You know, the orbiter is actually pointed out towards the Hudson, and I would have put it a little closer to them, but they put it almost all the way back. It's like, bravo.
Did they bring it on the Hudson to the Intrepid? Because they couldn't have driven it down the road.
It was on a barge, yeah.
It was on a barge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You should have had a Scotch. Kelly. The question is, I also flew T-38 Chase. That is correct. I ran the T-38 Chase program for 13 missions. And if you ever saw a little tiny airplane, supersonic looking airplane, a little like that, about that size, maybe a little smaller, with the space shuttle, that was me. I can't explain it. To give you an idea, this is for chasing the space shuttle out of orbit. If you jumped out of the space shuttle, when it went, just as it went subsonic at about 40,000 feet, it would beat you to the ground. What? It has wings. Yes, and it falls like a brick. Or as one of my favorite phrases, Captain John Young, been to the moon twice, kind of guy, great astronaut. And he goes, it flies like a safe with the door open. It's important that you added that door part. Thank you, sir.
When you took it for the Intrepid, where did you land? You were JFK, or where did you land? You went out far to get to the boat. Where did they land?
It was at JFK. Yeah, and then they boated it from there. That's the only thing that will take a 747. Yes, sir.
Yes, when you added the pebbles, this is, to me, it seems to be a lot more difficult than utilizing a product like a glycol or something that would be heavier than water to be able to use.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can use other products besides pebbles. What, I was just wondering why you went to pebbles. It would be a lot easier to transport.
The pea gravel was for a couple of reasons. Cheap. I swear to you. Number two, it was already in bags. Number three, it won't leak. Engineers make these decisions at NASA. Have you not seen how we land on Mars? Why don't we blow up a ball around the spacecraft and have it bounce around on the surface of Mars, and then after it finishes about, a minute later, it'll deflate, and then we'll just plop it over on its feet. That's the stuff we think of. We're those people. Anybody else? Oh, wait.
The first one I saw, I'm going to go all the way to the back here.
By the way, thank you, Jason, for facilitating this.
First of all, thank you for a terrific presentation. That was wonderful. Question I have is, it sounded like the idea of a shuttle carrier was kind of a late-breaking idea, and you used it also to do drop tests. Does that mean that before somebody had that idea, there was no way to do a drop test, and they weren't planned?
A drop test, you have to lift it first. The only thing we had that would lift something is, for example, the B-52 we had at Dryden that would drop the X-15, which was a hypersonic vehicle we had back in the old days, if you're not familiar with that. And it goes under the wing, and it weighed about 20,000 pounds. And that's about as much as we can lift. They have to add a zero to what we were trying to do, at least 200,000 pounds, at least. So somehow, we had to take it up a notch. So yeah, we've had other airplanes that do what's called parasite carry. But that's, the 747 was the only one that could do this. By the way, the Russians did the same thing, the Soviets, I should say, did the same thing with the Buran, and what they had a shuttle carrier of their own. Looked like ours, but Russian. One is at Space Center Houston on display. The other one is actually up here at Palmdale in the desert. There's a little museum, an outdoor museum. So it's just out there all by itself with a couple other things. Yes, ma'am.
When you talk about all this, it sounds really, everything's engineered to death, and it's just so precise and everything, ounce of weight, all these things, every speed, every speed. Did you ever have things not go right? When you see all this,
Yeah, the question is, did anything ever not go right? We're NASA. Yes. Yes. All the time. That's why they had us on board. You know, stuff, you know, you make guesses. A lot of the stuff you do as an engineer is you guess at what's going on. And you say, oh, it's going to fail this way. It's going to go this way. The failure modes are these. Well, what if it's not? You know, well, you can't. What if all those things? So you have a flight crew. And one of the things you do is you make sure the flight crew knows how to identify when things are going south. You say, I'm not going to let them go any further south. And I'm going to put this on the ground. We're going to talk about it and have long meetings. So that was our job. You know, that's the whole thing of research pilots, is which we were test pilots. And it was always considered hazardous duty, which is cool because we got paid extra. Anybody else? No, we live in Palm Springs. The real Palm Springs. Yeah, what she said. Yeah. I get a kick out of everybody saying, oh, I live in Palm Springs. Oh, what part of Palm Springs? Oh, you know, India. Yeah, okay. Yeah, say, we're not in Indio. We're in Palm Springs. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you guys very much.
Quite a brilliant speaker. Thank you.